Hey guys, it's Petru. Just going through the game mechanics of this roleplay card game I have made. I did a brief video, well, not a brief video, I did a video with some people playing it. It was the first time anyone had played it, including myself, so it was kind of a bit hard to some degree to follow what was going on. So I'm going to go through things a little bit more clearly, to sort of just explain what's going on. And so what happens is how you set up the game is you come out with a theme. This is the most important part. A 60 card deck, that's these two here, that make 60 cards. Enough characters for the theme and enough settings for the theme. In this particular theme, it'll usually be written on the theme card itself. In this particular theme, you want about 2 characters per player, and then you always want, in a general sense, about 50% more characters than that. So we've got 12 characters, and this one's intended for 4 players. Themes can be for different players. So we've got 12 characters here from different people on Gateway. You know, there's Davian, myself, Perks, Lil Crean, Spec Marine, Claw, Absenthia, Cole Mybara. I think that's how I say it. I'm sorry, Cole. Urzat's Creed. I misspelled Urzat's. Barney Fife, and Sif Sand. So these are the characters we have here. I'll go into the specifics of cards at a later time, but this is just meant to be a demonstration video on the mechanics. And I've also got 6 locations here, including places you might recognize from the multiverse, Wing City. This is, yeah. So the general point of the game is not so much to win. There is no way to win, so to speak, but there is a way to end the game. And your goal is to reach the end of the game in the most interesting way you can and cause cool interactions and interesting things playing out. You want it to be dramatic, like it's an actual role play, because it is a role playing card game. Um, and most themes will tell you how the game ends, and I'll go into that maybe in a minute. But just for the setup, we'll assume there's 4 players. So someone to each edge of the table, and we'll just divvy out the characters. Say that's me, because I'd pick my own character, and that's Perks, because he wants his Rixies. He'd pick Russian and Jinai. Oh, goodness. Let's just say that's Spec Marine down there. Hey, Spec. And let's go with, we'll put these two over here, and we'll claim it's Barney. So the spare characters, whoops, they all go up in the top. In some decks, they will come together. You will use the spare characters in the game. I don't think there is any of that in this game. But yeah, so those ones are going to go up there. Just going to call this one, this token, moment. Call this token Russian, since Russian was grabbed. And you can't even see it. Well, anyway, I'm just going to move the unused things up here. My apologies to Cole and Sif Sand, you didn't get picked. Oh, and Erzatz. I actually really like Cole and Aino. And Dawson's kind of interesting for the purposes of combat, and really crazy things can happen. Anyway, so each player starts with 2 characters. They just sit in their area, and then you divvy up the settings to each player. You don't have to divvy them up in any specific order, but it's best if you give them, 2 like this, and then 1 like this, where the players who go last, the game goes clockwise, and we're going to assume this is me being the host. So the game goes clockwise, through each player, and it's best to give more settings to the players who go first, because they actually mechanically do things first. They play first, so you can get those cards out in the field sooner, and gives you more tools to play with. So there's a couple other things you need to set up. So one of the key things you do is these are your story arcs. They're a special kind of card where you put them on the field and they just sort of stay in play. So it's important to give 1 player each of them at the start of the game. We'll assume this is each player's hand down the bottom, below them, just for simplicity's sake. I'll line things up a little neatly. So a story arc is a plot twist. All cards in this play deck are either plot twists or they are equipment. Plot twists basically make things happen in the game, and I'll show 1 or 2 of them as we get going. And other equipment cards, they help you sort of give something to your character that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have. So that's a bit neater. And then the remainder of the plot twists, the story arcs, get mixed in with the rest of the plot twists and equipment. So we're going to set this Battle for Terra up to the top right, just so it's out of the way. And this area, we're actually going to put all our story arcs and things like that. And we're going to leave that area sort of clean and available just for those, because the rest of the board tends to get a little bit messy. In general speaking, things here could be encoded a little better, but it's quite somewhat can be a little bit arduous to encode things. Ideally, I would have, you know, a set card that you can easily manipulate with single button presses, but we don't have that opportunity right now. Thank you, Tabletop Sim. So what I'm doing here is I'm laying out another important part of the game, and typically I'll do this before the game begins, so that we don't spend time on it. But here is this is to represent bonds between characters. Bonds are an important part of the game that we'll get into later. The most important thing to explain here is that bonds come in 4 colors. Red is very negative bond. 2 characters really don't like each other, hate each other, enemies for life. Yellow is less friendly, just 2 people who don't like each other. Maybe they're rivals, maybe they just, you know, don't want to be around each other. Green is positive. It's characters who, you know, friendships, you know, some degree of closeness, camaraderie. And then blue is characters who are very close together, usually tight family, blood bond, lovers, that kind of thing. And so at the start of the game, whoops, at the start of the game, the 2 Rixie brothers here, they start with a green bond together, and that's just important to keep track of. And this is how you keep track of all your bonds between your characters, because they come up, and they can be quite important. And to an extent, this game requires you to keep track of a decent amount of information. So I'll try and reduce the burden of it in general. Try and keep it as simple as I can, but you know, sometimes you just can't. Anyway, so next thing is each character starts with a drama point. I'll actually shrink this right down. You can have several drama points on a character. Drama points do things. They can do really cool things. We'll see what those things are in a bit. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab out one of these, shrink it down to as small as I can. I'm going to put 2 of these on every character. And these are just going to go on these little marks of neutral, positive, and so on. And that's your heroism and your outlook. They sort of represent how heroic your character generally acts or sees themselves, like their goals. Not so much how they see themselves, but you know, whether they do good things or whether they're doing bad things to reach a good end, things like that. It's very rare to see a villainous character, but the game isn't necessarily structured around specifically people starting as villainous. Most decks that will start with a villainous character will be about that villain. You know, it's most people don't try to be evil, basically. So white will be our drama points, and black will be just our little modifiers, our nodules. It'll also go on the stress of characters, but we'll get to that in a bit. So the next step is to shuffle this deck. Now we're all set up. Divvy out an additional 2 cards to each person. And this is your hand. Your hand will always be, at the start of your turn, 3 cards. There's never a reason not to have 3 cards. And cards in your hand don't make you stronger or better, so you don't need to have more cards, and having less cards doesn't make you weaker. It's just sort of options that you can do things with. So we assume that one player is the host, and I'll just give myself a quarter to represent that. One player has initiative. So this is me. Actually, I'll write some names up there, just real quick. This is... Oh, goodness. Thanks, Tabletop Sim. Just say this is Patch. Pucks. Beck. Bonnie. That's just, you know, a pretend play group. So I have initiative, Patch has initiative, and I look at my 3 cards, and I have to choose one to cause something to happen in the game. What that means is certain cards will only interact with combat, and you cannot use those cards. They don't do anything that makes a difference in the game. However, and equipment cards. If you have initiative, you cannot play equipment cards either. Um, However, something like collateral damage, that puts something on the board that can really change the game, change how things interact. Build a better world, that also creates an interesting interaction. That's probably the one I would play on the first turn, but I'll talk about that in a sec. And then challenge, this one actually does cause a change in the game. Um, for example, it starts combat between two people. That causes a change in the game. It's not like other combat cards where it just says, "Oh, negate an attack," or you get +1 skill. Where if there was no combat, they wouldn't do anything. So you do have to play with initiative a card that has an impact on the game. And you can choose to play this card face up or face down. And in this instance, I would play this card face up, so everyone can see what it is. And it's interesting. It's an interesting sort of mechanic, and there's the player's initiative. You can choose to play a card face up, um, and then what you do is you also pick a character and a setting. Typically speaking, you can choose to break this up however you like, where each player chooses a card to play, then each player chooses a character and a setting. But if you want to play it just by the ear, you do it sort of in real time. So I'm gonna move the play deck as well. It's kind of in the middle, in the way a little bit. So I'm gonna choose a setting, and this will be the setting for this scene. And we're gonna start the scene in the hospital. And then I'm gonna choose Aya. Aya sounds like she'd end up in a hospital. So she's there, and I put my plot twist next to her. Um, and then the next person basically does the same. They get to choose a character and a plot twist. So let's have a look at perks cards. So we've got Hardened by War. So you see there's a few plot twists around. Shocking Twist is a great card to play, but that's better to play later on. So, oh, this is perfect actually. I'm going to put that down, and let's chuck down Rixie. Ixion, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry, Perks. And that's his plot twist. Now, every player but the first plays their card face down. Nobody gets to know what that is. That's face down. And let's have a look what Spec theoretically has. So story arcs. It's good to have lots of story arcs. They fill up the board and they create interesting interactions. So we're going to go with personal rivalry here. That's why I'm picking them all so quickly. This is a combat-themed deck that things are meant to happen in. We're going to send out Russian. Things are meant to happen in this combat-themed deck. There's meant to be, fighting. And there will be fighting. It's actually mandatory to see the end of the game. But preferably not immediately. It can happen. It's just not advised. Here we go. You know what? This seems perfect for Barney. He's got propaganda. So we're going to send out his lady, Alana Torres. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. From what I hear, that name is from Star Trek Voyager, and that picture is from Firefly. Oh, Barney, you tricky devil. So, no one technically knows what these three cards are, except the people who played them. And now that we've each put a character in, we start to resolve the cards one after the other in order. So the first card we resolve is Build a Better World. So I have to pick two characters not in a faction. The factions haven't been decided yet, so that doesn't come up. So I have to pick two characters not in a faction. I'm just moving stuff out of the way, sorry. So I have to pick two characters not in a faction. They gain a green bond, and if they end up in different factions, they each get a drama point. If one attacks the other, their bond becomes yellow. If one dies, the other gets an additional drama point and lowers their outlook, and this card is discarded. This represents sort of a sad tale of two people trying to build a better world together, but maybe they see different things. Say that because say I play it now, and I will. I'll play it between, let's go Alana Torres and Russian. So we draw a line representing green bond between Alana Torres and Russian. It says that they are not in a faction, but they can join a different faction, and that will cause them to get a drama point each. And it sort of represents a difference of ideals, that they both wanted to do this thing, but then they saw a different way, and they sort of split up. And to keep it simple, we put it up here, and then we get this little token, we put it there, and we get Russian's token, and we put it there. I've just realized all the HUD is on, GUI or whatever. So now that's happened. So that card's going to stay up there until it's resolved. And if it's never resolved, then it just stays there until the end of the game. So next we resolve Flip's card. Excuse me. So he can choose a character with a bond. Well, he can choose, So he could choose, the thing about these cards that say choose a character, you have to choose characters in the scene. You cannot choose characters outside it unless the card explicitly says so. So in this case, choose a character. When they have no bond, discard the card. Whenever the chosen character gains stress, put the same number of drama points on this card. Whenever the chosen character gets a bond, this card gains a drama point. Remove 3 drama points and break a green or yellow bond. The chosen character permanently gets +1 skill or power. So this represents a character who, through the arduous nature of war, loses their connection to other people and becomes more of a war machine, so to speak. And we're actually going to use that on, yeah, I think on Ixion. We're going to use it on Ixion. Ixion is going to get hardened by war. We're just going to put that up there. And again, we're just going to put a little token on there so we can keep a track of that. Ixion comes with a bond, so that's actually a very important part to this game. So next, we've got this personal rivalry. I think that actually starts at drama points, but we're not worried about that at this time. So again, Russian, pick 2 characters in different factions or not in a faction. They cannot join the same faction. Excuse me. And you and the other player, you basically have to agree on a green or a yellow bond. And if you cannot agree, then you have to roll off to decide who gets to pick which bond it's going to be. Generally, it's better to agree with other people to make interesting things happen. But then, in this one, because there are so many characters on this board that already have bonds, it's if a character has, say, a green bond already, like these two already have a green bond, this card can technically override it. But generally speaking, you don't want to override a bond because you're not breaking a bond and you're not changing a bond. It's sort of just you're making the bond a different bond. I mean, it is changing the bond, which can be important. Say, socially awkward. Whenever I gets or changes a bond, she loses 1 drama point. So, changing the bond this way would cause something like that to happen. And, that can be interesting, but it's better to create new bonds rather than change old bonds if you can avoid it. So in this case, we're going to have Aya and Alana Taurus are going to have a personal rivalry, just because I'm really picking on Barney today. And their personal rivalry is going to be yellow. So these two do not like each other. They have a rivalry. They want to see each other beat. So we're going to move this one up here. What does that one say? Whenever both characters are in the same combat, put a drama point on this card. And we're just, again, going to grab these little tokens, put them on there. Whoops, I grabbed an entire card. And this is, it seems like I'm taking a long time to do these things, but that's because I'm stopping to explain everything. If you're familiar with the cards, you just pick it up and you go, oh, okay, it's that card. I understand it does something, to some degree. You don't have to keep track of everything in the game, and to an extent, it's more interesting if you don't. There's certain things that can come up that, it's kind of, oh, wow, that's a surprise. So, propaganda is another story arc, except any character can use it. And it's kind of interesting, an interesting card, and any character can use this card to gain mental stress, which is negative, but then they gain drama points. And then the owner of this card, who is Barney, but we're not too worried about that, can then use the card to do something. And so that's the first turn, and I know that was quite a long turn, but that's because it was all story arcs. And at the end of the turn, each player gets a card. And this is sort of why the first video took so long. It took 50 minutes, and we only played like the first 4 turns. And that's because playing all these cards and reading all these cards is quite burdensome, especially when you have to explain the rules as well. But the scene is over, so we're going to move everyone back to their owners. Oops. Knocked these all around. So this setting, we're actually just going to put it up near the play deck. Now, any player may choose that setting as the scene, instead of playing one of their own. But in this case, we're going to have Perks play the arena. Perks is going to send out Ixar. Ideally, you don't want Ixar and Ixion to be played by the same person, because it's more interesting to see the brothers interact in the hands of two different people. And it's also really fun to see how other people treat your characters. Sometimes you might just pick one character and be like, this is the character I'm playing with. And you're entitled to do that. A player can have between 1 and 3 characters, if they wish. That is, the rules are you may have 1 to 3 characters in a game. That's the absolute maximum. Because obviously when you get so many characters, the game can get quite bogged down. But yeah, ideally you have your 2 characters, and each player has 2 characters, but you can have 1. There will be themed decks where each player only has 1, and that's a fantasy-based deck. Anyway, because last turn, I had initiative, the initiative passes clockwise. So now it's Perks who was up to starting, deciding the scene. And he does have an equipment. However, because he has initiative, he cannot play that equipment. He must play a card that will have an impact on the scene. It starts the scene. So we get a Shocking Twist or Memorial Wall. So we're going to have Shocking Twist because, nothing wrong with a Shocking Twist. But he's going to play it face down. So none of the other players would actually know that that card is what's starting the scene. And this is important because sometimes you might want to start the scene with combat. You might want to change how things play out. So, and then, who knows, let's go with Heroic Reputation. Just throw that in. Jinhai is going to make someone into a hero. And what's Barney got over here? My Inspiration? Sure. And what do I have? Collateral Damage? Sure, let's get... No, I've got the Terror of the Meek. Is there anyone bad or villainous? I don't have a bad or villainous character, so I can't actually play that. So I'm going to use this. I know it seems redundant to put him face down, because you all already get a chance to see what it is, but I'm just representing how the game's meant to play. These cards up here would be in your actual hand, like this. So other players would not be able to see it on the board. So now we've got this set up again. So we start with Perks card. Each character in this scene gains a drama point. So boop, 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 boop. And then that card, it's just a plot twist. Like I said, every card in your hand that isn't equipment is a plot twist. But it's not a story arc, so it goes into the discard pile. Straight away, boop, into the discard pile. The discard pile is important because when you run out of cards in the actual deck, you shuffle the discard pile back in. And then here we go. Heroic Reputation, choose a character with heroism neutral or higher to become a hero. Well, let's go with Davian. I like Davian. Davian's going to be a hero. So what we do for this is we raise his heroism 1 stage. That's what the card says. If the heroism ever drops to bad or lower, discard the card. They get +1 skill and their physical threshold increases by 1. So I'm just going to write that in. +1 skill and phys thresh. So now, hovering over that, when I get the UI on, that'll, show me that. And he may spend 2 drama points to become the target of attack, so on and so on. Anyway, so that's a cool little mechanic. Gonna put that up there. Put a little Davian token on it. And that's Davian. He's now, he's gone from neutral to good heroism. So your characters can actually change over the game. The little dot at the start is just to indicate what they start at the start of the game. Because it's important, sometimes there will be mechanics that sort of reset them or, something like that. And it always helps tell you where they're meant to start at the start of the game. So choose one of your characters. So, again, congratulations, June Blackwelder. You've been picked. Have I done those right? I have. Good. So, when that character's faction enters combat, alright. So, this is a combat-themed card. We'll put it up the top. We'll put cards that are general interactions up the top. And we'll put cards that are character-specific interactions down the bottom. And then lastly, we're going to do collateral damage. Again, this is a general. Put that up there. It ties into combat, ties into combat. All this stuff ties into combat. And that's this scene over. So that one went a little bit faster now that I don't have to explain the rules as much. I'm going to move everyone back to their home. And again, everyone gets a new card. Now, there's something I wanted to point out that's kind of interesting, is this Terra of the Meek. It can only be equipped to a bad or villainous character, and currently I don't have a bad or villainous character. But there are ways to make your characters bad or villainous, and you can equip cards to other people. Alternatively, at the end of a turn, if you have a card and you think, I'm not going to use this card, it's never going to apply to me, you can simply just flip it over, put it back in the deck, shuffle, and draw a card. And you can do that once each turn, at the end of the turn. You can do that, once for a card you think isn't useful. So you can usually at most draw 2 cards in a turn. One that you pass away from your hand and one that you've used in that turn. You also don't have to play a card in a turn if you don't want to. It's not a requirement. So we're going to continue on, and Russian's going to show up at Gambit's bar. So what part of the game we're in currently is, if you look at the theme, we're in the building tensions. Oh dear, my typos are pretty atrocious. So we're in the building tensions part of the game, and no one is in a faction, at least until each player has played 1 round. And so we're on to Specs round. Sorry, just having some water. So, So we're going to go with... See, this is the kind of interesting thing, is some of these cards, I can't remember the order. If you're meant to pick... Let me just go check out my own rules. Because I did write out the rules. They're very simple, a page and a half of rules. And I can't remember if you're meant to pick characters first or if you're meant to pick plot twists first. Yeah, so each player is ideally meant to pick a character first, as well as a setting. Like the player with initiative picks the setting, and they pick a character. Each person is ideally meant to pick a character first, so they know it's coming. And then each player can pick a plot twist to sort of play around that. I have a slight advantage, because I can see all the cards on the board, and it just makes play smoother. But you can do it in any order. Like, you can do plot twists first and then pick characters. It all depends on how you plan to play things out. I'm trying to mix it up a little and not have the same people. Who was that in the first scene? I think it was him. So we're going to have, mix it up just a little. And Spec is going to pick wrong foot. And let's see. So Barney's not actually going to play... Well, he's going to play a card, but he's not actually going to use it, because factions don't exist yet, so he doesn't need to. And let's put that down. I didn't actually read that. I don't remember all the cards, sorry. Alright, we'll go with Cranial Extractor for perks. So now we start off, we resolve wrong foot. Pick 2 characters with no bond, they get a yellow bond. So let's go Russian and Ixer. Russian and Ixer don't like each other very much. They've got off on the wrong foot. Then we go around, and that goes into the trash pile. Each character in your faction with a green bond or a blue bond with another character in the same faction raises their outlook. So we're not going to play that because factions don't come up. Barney's just going to sit on it. This one, Hope and Hopelessness. Each very negative character gets -1 power or skill and gains a drama point. So that applies to each character in this scene. There's only 1 negative character. And you know what? Let's do that. Yeah. To Gimp June Blackwelder. I am going to play this card. Hire is going to play this card. So, -1 skill. Now June Blackwelder has -1 skill, but she gains a drama point. Or she can pay 2 drama points to negate it. And you know what? She's going to do that, because who wants -1 skill? And because she negated it, she gets to raise her outlook 1 step. So June Blackwelder, she's feeling hopeful. She resisted this hopelessness that that this card was trying to inflict. It's not actually Aya, just to be clear. The characters aren't the ones. It's sort of those characters are inflicting it, but it's not always malicious. It might be that Aya came in and she was like, "Oh, I'm feeling really depressed. This is really dark," and it was starting to get to June Blackwelder. Alternatively, June Blackwelder sort of rebuffed it and went, "No, look, there's no reason to be so negative. This world's good. There's some hope in it. And that's why June raises her outlook. That's sort of the flavor of the cards, and the flavor of these cards is very important because it sort of tells the story. And lastly, we've got Cranial Extractor. That's an item, and we're just going to put that on Ixa. A character can have a single equipment, and that equipment, it does all things. This one sort of makes you lets you look at someone's hand. And if you have to, oh goodness, if you have to for any reason play a card on another character, play an equipment on a character that already has an equipment, the old equipment gets removed with the exception of, say, if they cannot remove it. There are certain things that cannot be removed. So Barney didn't play this card, and he's fine with that. Sometimes you don't play your cards. It's a little bit finicky. You have to be kind of gentle with it. You have to lift up, move slowly. Doesn't, go too nuts. Look, like that. I think there's also something tricky going on with the movement of Tabletop Sim right now. So Gambit Spark can go join there. So this is the most important decision, the most important setting for this theme. And I'll only go as far as this, like I did with the actual game, with actual people. Because this is combat. And in this case, what's going to happen is Barney is going to choose a location. He's going to choose Wing City Plaza. So Wing City Plaza, it's not important in its own right, but after this scene ends, combat starts, because the theme starts doing things, and things start happen as accordance to this theme. So what's going to happen is Barney's going to choose June Blackwelder, because she's quite a good fighter. I'm going to choose Davian. He's not a good fighter, but he's got some cool tricks that allow him to really get an upper hand. And Aya's not so good on her own right. Ixian's going to show up, as he does. And then we're going to have Russian, because this is going to be a fight. So everyone's bringing out their fight characters. We're going to get stuck in there. Now, Barney doesn't have a choice here. He has to play a card that changes the scene. Oh, hold on. I forgot to divvy out new cards. You know what? For the sake of Barney, we're going to throw that one back for now. Camaraderie, very important to Barney, I'm sure, but he can't really play anything with that card. So instead, he's going to get Ruthless Campaign, which is perfect, because he can play that. So he's just going to chuck that over here. And then what am I going to put? So I'm going to put down... Oh, actually, yeah, that's much more clever. Instead of Davian, let's get Aya over here. And I'm going to put Challenge there and put it face down. So we'll go with Memorial Wall for Ixian, if only to get it out of his hands. And for Russian, oh, he's going to have a faction banner, definitely. Wow. That's definitely Russian. Sorry, Spec Marine, if I'm completely mischaracterizing your character, but he seems like if he decided to join a revolutionary group, he would be the kind to take the lead. I don't know, I get that impression from mercenaries for some reason. He'd probably be like, no, screw this, I'm out of here, I'm not joining a faction. So, Ruthless Campaign, it's a story arc. Any character may spend 2 drama points to initiate combat. Not a problem, none of these characters have true drama points. Might have actually been a mistake on my behalf, that's fine. So next, challenge. It's a combat card. It's combat only. And I can initiate it now, but I don't have to. So I'm going to choose not to. And I'll explain why in a minute when we get to the combat. So, Ixion, story arc, he's actually not going to play that. Does he have... No, he doesn't. He is going to play that. I'm sorry. No, let's do this in a way that's interesting. Is that going to be... Just looking for a... Oh, goodness. Is that... Nope. Goodness. There we go. So we're just going to put that there, and we'll just put this back in the deck. Let's just say he put Bury the Dead down, with no intention to use it. So just put that there. And finally, Russian's going to flip this card. Faction banner. Yes, he's going to equip that banner. And he can place this banner in a setting and sort of claim it for his faction, so to speak. And he's not going to use it on this setting, because obviously, you know, this setting doesn't have a benefit for it. Might not be obvious to you. It's obvious to me because I know what all the cards are. So now, because of the theme, building tensions, combat is going to happen. But first we have to put every character into different groups. So to keep it simple, let's just put characters with green bonds together. So these two are going to join one faction. And then who else had a green bond? Oh, okay. Lana and Russian, they're in one team. Now we've got these ones in the other. I like to imagine that Artemis is kind of causing this. And the two factions I most like to put down is the Wing City Revolutionaries and the Terran National Government. Just, you know, that seems like an interesting couple of titles. So, combat is going to occur. And I know this is what you've all been waiting for. This is the important part of the game. So I actually need to get 2 different colored dice. Typically when you play, you'll have your own colored dice. It won't be, you know, it'll be 2 dice that are different colors to make it clear who's rolling what. So we've divided these characters up into factions. As you can see, June and Aya are in one faction, and Ixion and Russian are in the other faction. And technically the goal of the theme is to defeat the other faction in some way. But obviously the goal of the game isn't to defeat the other faction, because that would mean the game ends. And at this point, you cannot actually defeat the other faction. However, hurting characters, that is a part of this theme. Doing damage, people getting hurt, even people dying, even characters dying, that is a part of this theme. And it's very important that these things play out. So how combat works is each player chooses an attack, or to defend. You can choose to attack with power, or attack with skill. Aya is going to choose to attack Ixion with skill. She's a little outclassed, Aya. And then Ixion is going to choose to attack June with power. The Russian is going to attack Aya with skill, and June is going to attack Russian with power. So we've got like a complex web of attacks going in. So, you know, we'll get gray. So Aya is attacking there, Ixion's attacking there, Russian's going through and hitting Aya, and June's hitting Russian. However, before attacks play out, you are given the opportunity to play certain effects. For example, Aya's Vicky AI there says 2 drama points. She has to pay 2 drama points to get the effect. She gains +1 skill and power until end of turn, and this must be done before any dice are rolled, with some exceptions. For example, June's ability, Artemis Bow, 1 drama point. If June's combat roll is lower than her opponent's, she may re-roll it once. Generally speaking, there's not many things that apply after you've rolled. June is the only one, I think, and that's, to a degree, that's an oversight. But generally speaking, yeah, nothing is done after dice rolls. However, Aya is then going to play a combat card, where she challenges another character to one-on-one combat. And since she initiated combat, since she's doing this, Ixion is now her target, so he has a choice. He can either lose 2 drama points, or take 1 mental stress. And if he initiated combat, it would be negated if he chose not to fight. However, he hasn't, chosen to. He wasn't the one who initiated combat. So he is going to refuse this, because Aya's actually got an effect where, as an arena fighter, if she fights one-on-one with another character, she gets +1 skill, and that would give her a leg up over him, and that would start to tilt things. So instead, he's going to take 1 mental stress as penalty. It also means that he would be given the chance to change his attack to target her, which he would be able to do with power, and that would potentially be devastating. But he'd rather the mess of attacks, because he thinks Russian's going to hit, and if he lands a hit on June, it might turn out favorable. And even if it doesn't, it's more interesting to see more things happen. So he takes 1 mental stress, and then this card goes away. Now, before Aya gets to attack, no effects can be done there. Doesn't have enough drama points. But Ixion has two cards. Has a combat card, and the reason cards have the word combat on them is because you can swap them out with cards down here, which is especially important for Barney, who has 2 combat cards. If he wasn't forced to play a card, he could have switched it out with either of these cards, and combat cards obviously make a big difference. But in this case, he's got Now We're Even. So he's going to switch out this card, which I believe was Bury the Dead, yeah. Now We're Even, so he's going to play that card instead. And it allows him to choose 2 characters in different factions and negate an attack from one targeting the other. So in this case, he is going to actually negate Aya's attack entirely. So now Aya isn't attacking. And then it shifts their bond positively. He may shift their bond positively or negatively. Say it's like, now we're even. The attack, stops the attack and it doesn't go through, and the people sort of cancel out their debts. And maybe that makes one of them hate the other more, or maybe it's like, oh, you did a kindness to me. And you know what? I think Ixion isn't a bad person. So I'm going to make it a green bond between Aya and Ixion. Aya appreciates that that he negated her attack. She didn't want to fight today. So now we're going to start actually doing attack rolls, starting with Ixion attacking June. So how combat actually works is both sides roll a dice based off, and then they add the stat that was chosen. So Ixion chose power, and they both roll, and they both add their power. So Ixion's 1 out here. And the attacker is actually favored. If the attacker has a higher or equal roll to the defender, they will deal the defender 1 physical stress. Then, in addition, if the defender rolls 4 or lower than the other person, that is to say Ixion had an overall result of 10 and June had an overall result of 4, then June would take another 1 stress of her choosing, of physical or mental. If an attacker rolls lower than a defender, then the attacker instead takes 1 stress of their choosing. In addition, you may choose to defend, in which case your character does not attack. They get +2 to their rolls, but they do not deal any damage. So if an attacker fails to hit someone who is defending, they take no penalty for attacking that person. So defending is really a survival mechanic. It doesn't progress the game, but it is a very strong way to keep a character from dying, because it basically gives them +2 to whichever stat that has been chosen. But yeah, in this case, June has taken a hit, which is impressive if you've read that card in the brief glimpses I've given of it. Let's just smudge out this line. Now Russian's going to attack Aya. Let's continue this rolling. So he has 3 skill and she has 1. So we're going to roll. He's rolled 3, so that's 6. She's got 4 and 1, so that's 5. That was actually very close, apparently. Yeah. So he hits her, and she is also going to take 1 physical stress. But fortunately, Aya's tough as nails. She's an arena fighter. It takes a little bit more than that to take her down. And then lastly, June is using a power attack to hit Russian. And we're just going to roll for them too. And June definitely hits. In fact, she hits so hard that Russian is going to take two stress. So Russian has a lot of mental stress backing up. And what June has essentially done is because she rolled so high, because her power was so much higher than his, he takes this, he takes like a really big blow. So he can either choose to take one extra physical stress, or he can take one extra mental stress. And mental stress sort of represents shock, you know, being hit with something and it puts your body into shock. But being a mercenary, Russian is very durable to that kind of thing. He's seen a lot of bad stuff, I imagine. Um, and this war is nothing new to him, so he's not too badly shocked by that. And that is combat resolved. Now, the important thing to say about combat is when a character reaches maximum stress like that, they are defeated. And then the character who caused them that stress, assuming it was a character, rolls to see if they are dead. They don't roll to see if they're dead. They may attack again, basically, to see if they kill that character. So say it was Ixion doing a power attack against Aya, he would roll, and he would succeed. Aya would be dead at that point. And when a character dies, each character that shares a bond with them would then get a drama point. Because gosh, even your enemies would be shocked to find you died. It would change how they view the world. And that is how that happens. But ideally, the goal of the game isn't to kill other characters per se. You're not trying to eliminate them, but it is an aspect of war, and this is a theme about war. There will be other themes that aren't about war and fighting. Generally speaking, most themes will have combat in them, but they won't be about fighting to the death. It'll be just, fighting happens, and it's a part of a lot of role play. Not all of it, obviously. You can have very peaceful role plays, and I do plan to represent that. I'd love to do a romantic comedy type themed deck where it's all about your bonds but yeah. So anyway, that is combat. Combat has now ended. This card goes down. Aya goes back to me. Ixion back there. Russian back away. Russian still has this card on him forever. And June back over to Barney. And Wing City Plaza goes up there. Move these dice out of the way. I forgot to move the initiative around. The last thing that happens in the first round is each team chooses a leader and a follower after the combat. I also forgot to mention that characters on this side get +1 skill and power in the first combat because they have less people. But, let's go like this. Let's go... Russian was in the battle. He's got the flag. Yeah, he can be the follower to Alana Torres. Alana Torres strikes me as like the official leader, whereas the Russian is sort of a follow-up leader, so to speak. He sort of follows, not in her footsteps, but he didn't sign up to be a leader. He's a mercenary and just sort of falls into that position. Likewise, Aya is defending the Terran national government. She's not a leader, but say Artemis here is sort of orchestrating things in the background. So we'll put Aya as the leader, and Davian's going to be the second in command. And June is, she's the... Is it June? Did I get it right this time? I did. June is sort of the orchestrator manipulating the things in the background. It's actually interesting, flavor-wise, to have the scribe and June manipulating things, on opposite ends, on opposite sides, story and flavor-wise. So that's the first 4 rounds, and how this theme works is every round that you play through every player, you do a combat. And after you've done that 3 times, the session, the theme ends. The other important thing is each team chooses a HQ out of the available scenes, out of these available settings. So it's sort of like an extra character, but it's a setting, so to speak. It's a safe space that if you go there, combat can't start there. So two settings get locked away from combat in case you're worried about your character dying, but you still want to play them. So lastly, how this theme ends is if a leader and a follower in a faction are both dead, then that faction is defeated. And the only thing that when a leader dies, a follower replaces them. But if they both die, that's it. You don't get any more. You don't get additional followers. It's just the leader and the follower. You only get two. And likewise, at the end of the game, at the final combat, um, if both sides still have their leader or neither side has a leader, the winner is the side with the most characters supporting it, and the game ends. The game actually closes out. So at the end of the game, yeah, the end is decided by who has the most people, assuming that one side does. If, for example, a leader is still alive on both sides and there's only, two other members on each side, then it's sort of assumed that the battle never ended. But that everyone had to go lick their wounds. And yeah, the idea is you want to reach that conclusion, you want to reach that epilogue, and have a resolution to the events that played out in this theme. So I hope that demonstrated how the game is meant to play. From this point, initiative would pass to me. And as I've got, these cards, everyone gets another card. Goodness. So again, then things continue to play out. Obviously, the prison comes into play, and the super weapon base comes into play. And HQs are in play, and combat is in play, and everyone's picking things to do. And now that you're split into factions, you want to fight. I actually forgot, was there anyone who can't be in the same faction? Two characters in the same faction. So that's fine. How about that one? Personal rivalry. They cannot join the same faction. So these are all things that would have started triggering, because combat happened. Let's have a quick look. So collateral damage would have occurred. Nope. 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 So no, that didn't happen. Did Ixion gain stress? I don't believe he did. So that didn't happen. And that didn't happen. So fortunately, none of these plot twists actually ended up happening. And we're clear from any of that sort of strangeness where I would have overlooked something. Anyway, so that is fundamentally how the game goes and how the game plays. And I know it's a lot to keep track of. You've got story arcs and you've got this bonds to keep track of, and your own cards and your two characters and what settings you want to choose. But it's really a game about having fun and having interactions. And you're not meant to worry too much about things. If you forget something, don't think about it too much. Just trying to remember what's affecting your characters. Just go, okay, this affects my character and this affects my character. It affects Davian and it affects Aya. I need to keep track of that. That's what's important to me. And that way, everything sort of gets a little bit micromanaged and by each player, and it's not so much of a burden for an individual. And it's kind of fun when you forget about something and a player goes, aha, I'm going to use this, and suddenly Ruthless Campaign combat has started. And everyone's like, oh no, I have to prepare for combat. I have to deal with this combat that's just sprung up. And likewise, June Blackwelder, she's a fun one to overlook because of just a little divine. That's a pun because the character is quite short. And she has 4 power and skill. Oh, sorry, she's petite was the description given to me. When I was working on this was Absenthia. I was going through the character sheet and we were talking about it. And yeah, she's just a little divine. And so she secretly has 4 power and skill, but don't tell anyone who isn't paying attention because June, she surprises people. She just looks like an ordinary human with 1 power and skill, and then pop, she's a god. So there's lots of little fun things like that that come up, and there's so many more cards, and I'll go through each of the characters in the next video I do, where we look at these things, because I'm so excited to go through the characters and sort of explain the flavors and mechanics and how they tie into the game, and why some are really strong when they don't appear to be, and how the balance of the game works. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that explained all of the rules. I don't know if it did. There are some rules that, most of the rules are very contextual. So I think that was basically every rule. I think the only thing that didn't come up was bond shifting. You can shift a bond negatively, which makes it go from blue to green, green to neutral, neutral to yellow, yellow to red, or positively, going the other way. Equipment, only one equipment to a character. If a new equipment replaces an old equipment, the other one's just discarded. Anything that's discarded goes into the pile. Yeah, I think that's everything. I will note that, yes, I didn't put Jinhai into a faction. That's because Jinhai's first ability is Jinhai will not join either faction. Jinhai will not attack human characters. Jinhai helps humans. I like Jinhai. Jinhai really messes with this themed deck. So yeah, that's what this is, a themed deck. It is meant to be a sort of contained, I wouldn't say balanced, but a contained experience where you can experience a certain game that plays out in a certain way, that doesn't rely on, people bringing new stuff. However, you can, if you want, in the future when there's more characters available, you can take characters, just go, no, I don't want to play Jinhai today. I'm going to play this character from this other deck and bring them out. And you go, can I play this one? And the host just goes, yeah, that sounds like fun. We'll all bring two different characters that nobody knows who's bringing what. And the only rule in that case is that please don't have two of the same character. Please don't have two Ixians. That would just be messy. You'd have two Ixians. They'd immediately have a green bond because they're brothers, but they'd be clones at that point. But yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this wasn't too messy, and I hope it was kind of clear. And if you ever need any more help with the rules, just contact me. I can give you the Word document. It's got a page and a half of rules. You can read through it. Hopefully that'll be pretty clear. And I do hope to also have a template laid out in the future, so it's a lot easier to see what's going on in the game. So you can just have this little nice cross in the middle showing where characters go, a place for that, a place for story arcs, and each player gets their own little spot for characters. Anyway, thank you for watching, and please watch the other videos. They're good fun, especially the one where we actually played for the first time. That was kind of anarchy. Thank you, and see you around.